I'm sure at this point you've at least seen some footage of Lethal Company at this point. After all, it's blown up and become one of the top sellers on Steam. And of course, I'm sure depending on when this video comes out, you'll either be mildly intrigued by this video or you'll be sick of seeing Lethal Company stuff hit your feeds. And of course, I'm sure depending on when this video comes out, you'll either be mildly intrigued by this video or you'll be sick of seeing Lethal Company stuff hit your feeds. Lethal Company is a game developed by an indie developer named Zeekers, and it revolves around the concern of landing on hostile moons and collecting scrap to sell to an enigmatic company. And along the way, you and your team must face dangers that these moons present to you, armed only with your wits, communication, and tools. Most of the time, conflict means death, but you need to push your luck to get the scrap. This video is different, mainly because this video is about the deeper stuff of Lethal Company and not just haha, here's a funny clip of me or my friend dying. The first things I want to ask is, why does Lethal Company work? I mean, for a game that always seems so funny in clips or in a couple of moments, why does it always scare the pants off of people? Part of that comes from the fact that both horror and comedy are two sides of the same coin. After all, horror comes from the subversion of expectations from things moving when they shouldn't, to things being different to how you left them. Horror thrives on the little things that you could not have noticed, or the things that you were meant to notice. Comedy, on the other hand, also thrives under subverting what you expect out of a situation, such as expecting someone to make it to the other side of the street only for a piano to land on them from nowhere. These two things are very similar, mainly in the fact that if done right, you can sit in anticipation of the big thing, only for it to miss you, and only for a little bit later does it whip around and hit you in the back of the head. Lethal Company also has the benefit of, in the moment, something can be terrifying for you, but to an observer, it can look quite comedic. After all, it can be quite funny to see someone freak out over a video game. Hell, I do that with my own clips of it, where in the moment I am quite scared, but then going back, I get a laugh because of how convenient it all ends up feeling. And all of this has to do with timing. Lethal Company has this immaculate blend of timing that is so good that it can be both hilarious and horrifying simply due to the fact that things happen right when they need to and when they don't need to. It's all slow builds and fake outs until eventually you reach the point where that thing that's supposed to happen is barreling you down until you're dead. But it's not just timing that Lethal Company does well, because in order for it to be comedic as well, it needs to be horrifying. Needs to have its time to breathe, because otherwise if it's constantly trying to scare you, the scares lose their meaning and slowly becomes more, I want to say comedic, but I don't think that's the word here. And because of that, horror games, especially cooperative ones, all tend to lose their horror when you have people who played it for a long time. Some notable exceptions for this rule, at least for me, are Alien Isolation, Lethal Company, and the Amnesia games. And my best theory is that these are all very good horror games because the fact that the threats in the games are very, very real and there is seldom you can do about them. But that doesn't mean that you can't do anything about them. Alien Isolation gives you the flamethrower, Lethal Company gives you the shovel, and in the bunker you can defeat the stalker with clever traps. Part of this, I feel, is because all of these games just give enough control to the player to let them feel like they are fully in control without having them realize that they aren't. And then, when the time comes, the game can show the player just how little control over everything they truly have. But that doesn't mean the player has no control. On the contrary, they will have something that you can never really take away from the player, and that is knowledge. The monsters in Lethal Company can be learned, and they can be dealt with through that learning. Whether it be looking at a coil head or checking over your shoulder to get a bracken to go away, the monsters can be countered. However, that does not mean that they are any less scary or difficult. Because of the more randomized nature of the game, you can have the random event of a coil head rushing you down and killing you before you even realize, or the sudden horror of turning around and seeing a jester standing right there. All these things lead to a very tense game, simply because of the fact that you have no clue what will happen. Same thing happens in Alien Isolation in the bunker. Now, all of this leads into my main point through the fact that it justifies why Lethal Company continues to be scary even though you know what's going on, and through the more comedic aspects of the game. The game thrives on subverting your expectations in both funny and scary ways. The coil head appearing out of nowhere while you've been tensely exploring a building can get your heart pounding. But the coil head appearing out of nowhere after you said, "Well, I think I just lost the coil head," can get you to start laughing. And a part of the reason why I think that's the case is because the game isn't actually directly trying to scare you or make you laugh. It's just that things happening in the comedy comes from the monumental coincidences that make it feel like make it feel almost like you've been thrust upon a stage and told to act your part, and if you do it well enough, you will survive to see the light of day. This also goes along with the company's feelings of isolation, considering you never see or hear from anyone else. All you have is the company, the creatures, and your crew, all of whom are confined to the same 9 moons that you're trapped between, and the only thing that shows that there have been someone else inhabiting this lonely part of the universe is the facilities and the notes of the past employee, who feels equally as lonely with his own crew. And the reason why I bring this up is because, well, that isolation leads to the fact that it allows the tension to stay with you. You don't have a safe area where you know there are other people. Just because the company building is safe doesn't mean it make it feel safe. All of it leads to the fact that you must go back down to the moons, it leads you to play your role, and it leads you to feeling like your role is the stranger, the one whom no one knows at all.